Hi kids, my name's Helen and I'd like to welcome you to Little Chef's program. I'll be your host for the next 7 weeks and I really hope you enjoy the recipes we're going to make and have some fun. So first of all, we have to give a big shout out to the province of Manitoba and for the Safe Home at Manitoba grant that's allowing us to bring this program to you. So thank you to Manitoba. So I believe you received a baking kit with a whole bunch of stuff in it and everything you'll need for baking and all the ingredients. That's pretty cool. So we have like aprons, we have measuring cups, measuring spoons, cookie sheets, aprons. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So today we're going to make chocolate chip cookies and you're going to need your cookie sheets, which I have back here. You're going to need your spatula, your apron, and the ingredients for the chocolate chip cookie recipe. You're also going to need a mixing bowl, a big one and a small one, or I have a mixer today. I'm lucky I have a mixer. And you're going to need a small bowl, cereal bowl kind of like this, and you're going to need some oven mitts. I have my oven mitts and I didn't take them out. And I want you to be careful with hot stuff, so you're going to need some oven mitts. And so when baking, it's always best to take out your ingredients a little bit before so they get to be at room temperature. And this makes your ingredients easy to mix. So for example, if your butter's not at room temperature, which we have here, then it makes it really hard to mix. And you want to make sure that baking's fun, right? So we want to make sure that the butter creams really well so it's nice and soft. And if you have it hard, it's not going to be able to mix it very soft, okay? But before we want to start, we want to talk about kitchen safety. So we'll be working with a hot stove. Sometimes we're going to use raw and fresh foods, sometimes knives, so you want to be safe. So I'm going to give you some safety tips each time that we cook. But for today, a few things that we're going to do that I want you to do every time you bake, and then we can add some safety tips as we go along. So first, we're going to wash your hands. I already washed my hands, but it's important that you wash your hands so that you don't get any germs in your food. That's very, very important. The other thing is to make sure you roll up your sleeves. Excuse me. So I don't mean push up your sleeves, I mean roll up your sleeves, because then you don't get any of your sleeve into your food. I personally, whether it's winter, summer, spring or fall, I always bake in a t-shirt. So maybe you want to run and put a t-shirt on, I don't know. But I always bake in a t-shirt. And then tie your hair back. So you don't want any food, you don't want hair in your food, that's kind of yucky. Nobody wants you to bake cookies or bake a cake for them and then find a long hair in your food. We don't want to have that happen, okay? So tie your hair back. And always ask someone to take things out of the oven with oven mitts. So if you're home with your grandma and grandpa or your mom and dad, always ask them to help you take hot things out of the oven or off the stove. But always use oven mitts or a really well padded towel. But don't ever take anything out of the oven unless you have oven mitts, okay? So I think it's time I'm going to make some cookies. So the first thing we're going to do is if you have everything at room temperature. So first thing we're going to need is we're going to need butter. So when they talk of first, we're going to need 1.5 sticks. When they talk about sticks, a half a cup is a stick whenever they say. So our recipe says 12 tablespoons. 12 tablespoons is 1.5 sticks. So we're going to take 1.5 sticks and we're going to put it into. So I already have a half left from a recipe, so you can take your other stick and you can take it and you can cut it in half. So we have 1.5 sticks. Okay. And then we're going to, but the recipe, I'm just going to put that in there and leave it for a minute because the recipe says that we should put the dry ingredients in. So I'm going to take my flour. Now when you have flour, you guys have a bag of flour. When we take flour and we measure it, I'm going to use a half cup because my unit is very small. When you get your flour is in a bag, and so the bag is compacted. When it comes from the store, they get tons and tons of bags and they're stacked on top of each other, so it's very compacted. So what you want to do is you want to fluff it up a little bit. So you want to make it fluffed up and you want to take your scoop. So what you want to do is if you want to measure this, you want to make sure it's level. If you want to make sure that it's really level, you can take your half cup and you take the knife and you take the back of the knife and you just go like this over the top, and that gives you a perfect half a cup. So there's half. And just loosen it up so that it's not compacted. And then you can take the knife and you go like this. There's 1. 1.5. 2. And you need 1/4. And you can do the same thing. There we go. 2 1/4, and then we need baking soda. Push it off to the side. And I keep my baking soda in a container because I need lots. And you can do the same with this. Sometimes baking soda has chunks in it, and you can do the same thing with this. Go right across your little scoopy there. Now the recipe says a pinch of salt. You can use, usually if it just says a pinch of salt, I do about 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. And you guys have 1/8 of a teaspoon in your measurement there. Now what you want to do is you want to make sure, I use a whisk. You can either use a whisk or a fork. You just want to make sure you incorporate everything. You don't want to mix your dry ingredients into your moist ingredients and have a chunk of baking soda or a chunk of salt inside there when it's mixed up. You want to have everything incorporated together, okay? So just mix that all up and set it aside. Now you're going to have your margarine and you want to add your sugar to it. So we have 2/3 of a cup of white sugar. So you take a 1/3 spoon. And with this, you don't usually have to take the knife because sugar is a lot looser. But you can do the same thing if you want. And then that's the white sugar. And then we have brown sugar. And how do you measure brown sugar? Brown sugar needs to be packed. So take your brown sugar and push it down. Brown sugar has to be packed. You see how it comes out? It's packed like that. That's how you want your brown sugar. Now I put my mixer on. A little bit short. Always lock your mixer. Doesn't matter how long I've cooked or baked. It doesn't matter whether you think you're a good baker or a bad baker or you think you're awesome. You should always be safe and you should always lock your mixer, okay? So I turn it on and you want to mix it. You always start slow and then you want to take it up a notch and you want to make sure that you cream your ingredients together. Okay, so make sure that you cream it and you can take it up a little bit and you want to cream the ingredients together. Now if you don't have a mixer and you have a hand mixer, you can do the same thing. If you don't have a hand mixer, just take another bowl and then you can take out a wooden spoon and you can do it the old-fashioned way. I'm sure your grandma or your great-grandma can tell you about doing that. And you just take a wooden spoon and you cream the butter into the sugar until it's smooth and it's well mixed. And I'll show you what it looks like, okay? So we're just going to keep this on a little bit high speed until we have it all creamed together. It's nice and mixed. Okay, it's quite fast in a mixer. So this is what you want. You want it so that it's nice and soft and it's pliable like this. And you can do that with a spoon in a bowl. It might take you a little bit longer. That's what you want. So now we have our eggs. So when you put your eggs in, you want them in one at a time. I don't ever teach any of my kids when I've had my nieces and nephews to crack an egg into a bowl. You should always crack it into another bowl, and I crack it on the surface of the counter into the bowl, one at a time, because if you crack it onto the edge, you'll probably get shells into your ingredients, and nobody wants shells into their baked goods, okay? So always crack your egg onto the surface of the counter, then slowly add on low speed, and add it one at a time. And you add it until it's fully incorporated. And you'll see a change in the consistency of the dough. of the sugar and the butter. It'll come away from the sides and it'll mix up. You turn that off and then you crack the other one. And you put that one in. So I have a little trick for you. If you guys forgot to take your eggs out and got them at room temperature and you're concerned about that because your eggs, everything else is warm but your eggs aren't, just grab a bowl like this, take your cold eggs, put them in the bowl, take some hot running water, cover your eggs up, set them aside, and while you're measuring your flour and your dry ingredients out and you putting your butter in the bowl and stuff, by the time you do all that, your eggs will be at room temperature. That's a nice little hack so you can remember. Then you don't have to worry about waiting for hours until your eggs are at room temperature, okay? So now we have our margarine that's soft. And so now it looks like this. So it's nice and soft. See how creamy that is? That's the consistency you want your cookies to be. So I don't know if anybody knows what baking powder is for. Baking powder is used as a leavening agent. So what it does is when baking powder hits liquid, it has little bubbles that form, and those bubbles are called leavening agents, sort of like yeast is in bread. And what it does is it hits, when the butter melts in the oven and it hits the baking powder, it causes it to bubble and it helps leaven the cookies, which is what helps it make it rise. And what eggs are used for in baking is eggs give us our flavor and our leavening. And that helps us make things, the flavor and the leavening of our cookies, and it gives it flavor and depth and texture. And that's why we need eggs in our baking. And one thing I didn't tell you what you should do is what you should have done at the first, and kind of knew at this, teaching people on TV, is you should put your oven at 375 degrees. And if you do that, it'll be ready for when you're ready for the cookies. Okay. So once we have this, we're going to and then we're going to take our dry ingredients and we're going to put all of them into the mixer. I'm going to turn it on low. And you're going to keep it low. Don't do it fast or it'll go like this. I've done that a few times when I was younger. You turn it on too fast and you have flour all over the place. You want to slowly mix them all together. A little bit fast, and then turn it off. Now, what you have here is, now that you've mixed this together, this is what you have, is what's called a cookie base. Now, we're going to make chocolate chip cookies now, but at this point, you can put anything you want in it. You can put chocolate chips in, you can put white chocolate chips in, you can put M&Ms in, you can put score bits in, you can put peanut butter chips in, you can put raisins in, you can make any type of chocolate cookies out of this base. You can put nuts in, but what you don't want to do is you could never put just nuts in. Nuts have such a high content of fat that what would happen if you put just nuts in is the nuts, oils in the nuts would melt with the margarine and you would get flat pancakes and they would probably burn. So if you're going to put nuts in, for example, for this recipe, if you wanted chocolate chip nuts, you would put half the amount of chocolate chips and half the amount of peanuts, or nuts, say pecans or walnuts or any other kind of nut. Or you could do raisins, half peanut butter, or peanut butter chips, so you can mix it up. But never put all nuts in because it'll just ruin your cookies. But this is a cookie base, so today we're putting chocolate chips in. So now that we have the dry ingredients in, we're going to add, oh, you know what I forgot? I forgot to put the vanilla in. But that doesn't matter, we can put it in now. So what vanilla does for a recipe is vanilla gives, sometimes if you have a really good vanilla, so for example, I make my own vanilla. So I buy vodka and I buy vanilla beans and I put the vanilla beans in the vodka and I let it sit for 6 months and I make it and I just keep adding vanilla And you can take the pods out of that, and you can take the vanilla beans out of the pod, and you can put them in your baked goods, and you'll get the actual flavor of vanilla. It gives a little bit of flavor, and it gives it just sort of brings the flavor of everything that you've put into your baked goods together, and just brings it all together. And if you have a really, really good vanilla, you can actually taste it in your baked goods. But it's just something that brings the flavor of everything together, which is very nice. It intensifies the flavor, sort of like salt does. So we're going to do that, and now we're going to bring the chocolate chips in. So at this point, if you're making yours by hand or you have a hand mixer, you'll want to fold in your chocolate chips. I'm lucky I have a mixer, and I can have it do the job for me. So we're just going to mix that up. You want to make sure it's very well blended. Doesn't take long with the mixer. And then we're just going to take it off. You want to get everything you can off of the mixer. You don't want to waste anything. And I don't scoop my cookies out of my mixing bowl because I don't like to scratch it, so I put it back into the glass bowl. So if you want to scoop, now for scooping, now you need your cookie sheet. I don't put anything on my cookie sheets, and the cookie sheet that we provided for you, you shouldn't have to put anything on your cookie sheet at all either. It's a really good cookie sheet. So we provided you with a scoop. So what I do with my scoop is if you continuously scoop, it's going to stick to the scoop. So take a little bowl and put some flour in it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the flour and you're going to rub it on the scoop. So the scoop is coated with flour. The first one won't get as much flour on it. And you're going to scoop. So what you should do is use the bowl as leverage to scoop. And put your fingers are one of your best tools in the kitchen. And don't overload the cookies because you want them to evenly cook. And then put it on the bottom there. You find that there's some cookie dough in the bottom of there. You're going to take your cookie dough and you're going to go like this and you're going to coat it. So the next one slips out. And as you do this, you'll get little bits of cookie dough in your flour, but that's okay. And if you want perfect cookies, just make sure you keep it even, like this, against the side of the bowl. And you should be able to get 12 on a pan. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist with my cookies, so I like them to be over the edge like that. But perfect or not, they'll taste absolutely fabulous. There. So you don't have stuff on your board to burn, you just pick them up and you scoop up the little ends because it's like glue, it sticks to it. So I tested these for you because of course the magic of TV, you want to get stuff done quick for you. So I tested some yesterday and the recipe says to cook them between 12 and 15 minutes. I always go on the lower end, but I notice everybody's oven is different. You'll find that some ovens will take the 15 minutes, some will take the 12. But I did test these yesterday, and I found that 11 minutes was really good because my oven is quite warm. So you'll find that ovens that sit between cupboards and counters maintain heat in small kitchens. So sometimes the ovens are hotter. So I start at 11 minutes, and you're looking for them to be golden brown around the edges. If they get a little bit too brown, they'll burn. So 11 minutes.
Yeah, go ahead.
And we should be perfect. So we're good.
Okay. Ready? Okay.
Okay, so we're going to put these in the oven. And I have a timer, so I can time it for 11 minutes. Okay. Okay, so these are ready now. And so I'll take them out. Always use your oven mitts. Okay, and I have a little trivet here. Okay.
Just hold on. Okay.
So you can leave them on the pan for just a couple of seconds. I wouldn't leave them on too long or they'll stick. So if you don't have a cooling rack, that's perfectly fine. I take my cookies off and I put them on the counter because honestly, they don't last very long. So you can, because you know, we can clean our counter later. They won't harm the counter unless you have like a, you know, fancy counter that that your parents say that you can't put stuff on, but in my house you can put them on the counter. So there you go. So you do, this makes about, I think 3.5 dozen. So you do that about 3 more times and you've got perfect cookies. So cookies usually last about 5 days, 7 days in a cookie jar, and what I usually do is I put mine in Ziploc bags, or I put them in Tupperware containers, and I put them in the freezer, and they can last up to 6 months. So I hope I get better at this, guys, because this is new to me, and I hope you really enjoyed the cookies, and thank you very much for joining me, and we have 6 more sessions. So thanks very much, kids. I hope you enjoyed it and enjoyed the cookies.